My name is Nora Ellison, I'm 28. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Started with a ding. Just one notification lighting up my cracked phone screen while I was finishing inventory at the small coffee shop I managed downtown. My parents' group chat, where the emojis had been replaced long ago by guilt trips and prayer hands, flashed a single sentence that drained every sound out of the room. Mom, we no longer trust you. No explanation. No follow-up. Just that. I read it 3 times expecting more. Something sarcastic, maybe a typo. But nothing came. The espresso machine hissed behind me, mocking the silence. I typed back one word, understood. Then locked the phone because what else can you say when your own family decides you're a stranger? The motif of this story appeared right there. A message. Small digital code. A door made of pixels instead of wood. 3 months earlier, I'd done what every good daughter is supposed to do. Quit my marketing job to help my parents rebuild my father's failing logistics business. I rewired the invoices, updated the branding, found new contracts. By August, the company had turned its first profit in years. Dad called me his quiet backbone. Mom said, "You're saving us." Then one afternoon, I noticed a $70,000 withdrawal labeled consultant expense. The consultant was my brother, Evan, the golden child whose only consistent skill was disappearing. I asked Dad about it that night. He laughed it off. "You wouldn't understand, Nora. It's a trust thing." Trust. That word again, so casual, so weaponized. When I pressed further, things shifted fast. Passwords changed, my laptop access revoked, my office key misplaced. And now, 3 days later, that message. I didn't cry. I'd already done my morning in drafts. Emails never sent, apologies never owed. I closed up the shop, swept the same corner 3 times, and wondered what it costs to stop trying to be believed. Still, some part of me needed to know. So I forwarded the message to myself, printed it, and slipped it into my notebook beside the receipt from the $70,000 withdrawal. Paper proof against digital betrayal. That night, lightning flickered over the city, the kind that makes every reflection look like an exit sign. I sat by the window, phone dark in my hand, and whispered the question that would carry me through everything that followed. If trust can vanish in one sentence, can truth rebuild itself in silence? 3 days later, at exactly 6:42 p.m., my brother called. His voice cracked through the static. "Nora, Mom says we need you. Something's happened." Outside, thunder rolled like a verdict. For the first time, I didn't rush to answer. I just watched the phone vibrate the same way you'd watch a door that suddenly remembered how to knock. And then I said quietly, "Let them wait." 3 days after they disowned me, my entire family was standing outside my apartment door. Faces pale, eyes hollow, panic replacing the pride they'd once worn like armor. I didn't open right away. I just watched them through the peephole the way you'd watch strangers rehearsing regret. Dad was pacing, phone to his ear. Mom kept wringing her hands around her purse strap. Evan leaned against the wall, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The motif had changed. What began as a message was now a door, waiting for me to decide if forgiveness lived behind it. "Nora, please." Mom's voice cracked through the wood. "We need to talk." I unlatched the chain slowly. "Talk? Or explain?" Dad's reply came sharp. "Something's happened with the company." Of course. It wasn't love that brought them here, it was damage control. I stepped aside just enough for them to enter. The scent of rain and fear followed. "What happened?" I asked, arms crossed. Evan spoke first. "The accounts, they've been drained. Everything's gone." "Gone?" He nodded. "Someone transferred all our funds into offshore accounts. Every cent. The police think it was an internal breach." I almost laughed. "You mean like when you moved $70,000 to your name for consulting?" Mom flinched. "Nora, please. This is serious." "So was that," I said. Dad dropped into a chair, rubbing his temples. We traced the IP address. It led back to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi. My pulse stilled. "You're saying I did it?" He looked up, guilt fighting pride in his eyes. "The evidence points to your logins. We came here before the police, because if it's not you, someone used your system." For a second I couldn't breathe. Then quietly, "You sent me that message. You revoked my access. How could I even log in?" Silence. Lila, my little cousin who had tagged along, murmured, "Aunt Elise, didn't you give Evan her old laptop?" Everyone turned. Evan froze. It was just to check old invoices. I exhaled slowly. The truth was beginning to knock. I went to my desk drawer, pulled out the printed message, the one they'd sent me, "We no longer trust you." I laid it on the table next to the receipts I'd saved. "Here's the funny thing about trust," I said. "It leaves fingerprints." Evan stammered. "You think I don't think. I know what patterns look like." The air in the room shifted, heavy, electric. The message on paper seemed to glare up at all of us, like a ghost that refused to rest. "You framed me to cover a theft," I said. "And now it's coming undone." Mom began to cry softly. Dad whispered, "What have we done?" I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used since college, Detective Marlowe, Cybercrimes Division. "Remember that internship I turned down?" I said quietly. "Let's fix that." Outside, thunder cracked again, like the universe applauding clarity. And behind me, the door swung shut on its own. Detective Marlowe arrived the next morning with black coffee, no sugar, and the same steady eyes that once convinced me truth could actually win. She was older now, hair streaked silver, but her voice hadn't lost its precision. "Let me guess," she said, flipping open a worn leather notebook. "Family. Finances. Familiar passwords." I nodded. And betrayal dressed as bookkeeping. The motif, the message that became a door, was evolving again. Now it was a ledger, every lie tallied in invisible ink. Dad sat stiff on my couch, avoiding Marlowe's gaze. Mom clutched her rosary, lips trembling silent prayers. Evan stared at the floor, sweat darkening the collar of his expensive shirt. Marlowe plugged a small drive into my laptop. "Let's see what ghosts live in this machine." Within minutes, lines of code reflected in her glasses. "Your login credentials were cloned," she said. "Access originated from a different MAC address. Definitely not your device." Evan shifted. "So, someone hacked her?" "Or," Marlowe replied, eyes sharp, "someone used a device linked to her account. You wouldn't happen to know who had her old hardware." Evan's silence was louder than any confession. I reached into my tote and handed Marlowe the printed message from my parents. This was the night they cut me off. 3 days later, the funds vanished. She scanned it, then turned to Dad. "Mr. Ellison, who changed your system passwords?" He hesitated. "Evan handled that." Marlowe's pen froze midair. "Then he also created the duplicate user credentials that redirected the funds." Mom gasped. "You can't be serious, he's family." "Fraud doesn't care about surnames," Marlowe said flatly. Evan finally snapped. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. Dad promised I'd be part of the company again. I was supposed to move the funds into a side account temporarily. Then the transfers multiplied and..." He broke off, face white. "So you stole," I said softly, "and blamed me when it spiraled." He swallowed hard. I panicked. Dad buried his face in his hands. Mom whispered my name like an apology she didn't know how to finish. Marlowe unplugged her drive. "We can freeze the offshore trail if we act today. You'll get most of the money back. But Nora, what do you want done?" Her question lingered like smoke. I looked at Evan. My brother who once built me a treehouse, who now built alibis instead. "I want the truth on record," I said. "No revenge, no silence. Just the truth." Marlowe nodded. "Then you'll need to testify." The word testify echoed like a gavel inside my chest. The ledger wasn't finished. It was still writing me in. As she packed up, Marlowe paused at the door. "You know," she said, "betrayal always starts with a message. But so does justice." When she left, the room felt lighter, but my heart didn't. Because I knew what came next wasn't trial, it was fallout. And family fallout always burns hotter than any courtroom. The next 48 hours felt like living inside an echo chamber. Every word I'd ever said about loyalty bouncing back at me in twisted tones. News traveled fast in our family. By dawn, my aunts, uncles, and even my grandmother's church group had heard that Nora turned her brother in. I didn't. Not yet. But in their eyes, hesitation was confession. The motif, the message, the door, the ledger had turned into something sharper now. A mirror. Everyone's version of truth reflected their own fear. Mom called at noon, voice shaking. "We can fix this quietly. Evan will return what he can. We'll settle before the courts drag us through headlines." Settle. I repeated. You sent me a message saying you didn't trust me. That's the only thing that was ever settled. She started to cry. You're tearing the family apart. No, I said softly. I just stopped holding it together. I hung up and drove to the company's empty warehouse, the place where I'd spent months rebuilding their chaos into order. Boxes stacked in silence. The faint smell of dust and diesel. My old office door still had my name taped to it, curling at the corners. Inside, I found what I hadn't known I was looking for. An unopened envelope addressed in my father's handwriting. For Nora, if anything goes wrong. I tore it open. Inside were printed emails between Dad and a man named Harper Consulting. Each transfer authorization bore Evan's initials, but at the bottom of the chain a different signature appeared. Dad's. My chest tightened. He'd approved every transaction. He hadn't been blindsided, he'd been complicit. I took photos of the pages, hands trembling. The truth wasn't a mirror anymore. It was glass, shattering under its own reflection. When I stepped outside, Marlowe's number lit my phone. We traced the final transfer, she said. It's not offshore anymore. It's in a dormant domestic trust under your father's name. The case just turned. My pulse stilled. So he used Evan as the scapegoat. Looks that way. I ended the call and sat on the hood of my car, watching storm clouds crawl over the horizon. Every betrayal had a sound. This one sounded like thunder forming too far away to stop. That night the family group chat lit up again. Dozens of messages, frantic and defensive. Dad, this is being misunderstood. Mom, please don't do this, Nora. I didn't reply. Instead, I uploaded the documents to Marlowe's secure portal and added one note. Truth submitted by the accused. When I hit send, the phone vibrated in my palm like a heartbeat learning to start over. In the reflection of the dark screen, I saw my own eyes looking back. Tired, sure, but unflinching. The mirror had finished its work. Now it was time for the truth to speak without me. The courthouse smelled like paper and rain-soaked coats, a scent I'd come to associate with endings. My heels clicked down the corridor, echoing off marble walls that made everything sound more official than human. Detective Marlowe met me outside room 302, a folder tucked under her arm. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be, I said. Inside, the pre-hearing conference was quiet except for the shuffle of documents. My parents sat on the opposite bench. Mom pale and trembling, Dad rigid, his jaw locked in the same stubborn angle I'd memorized since childhood. Evan wasn't there. Marlowe had told me he'd accepted an immunity deal in exchange for full cooperation. The motif had changed again. What began as a message, then a door, a ledger, a mirror, was now a light, blinding but necessary. Every secret was about to be dragged into it. The judge entered, gray hair slicked back, voice even. We're here to review preliminary findings in Ellison versus Ellison Logistics. Marlowe passed me a note. Stay calm. Facts will do the talking. The attorney presented the evidence I'd gathered. The cloned logins, the fake consultant invoices, the trust account registered under my father's name. Each page sounded like a verdict when it hit the table. Dad's lawyer tried to interrupt. Your Honor, these so-called files could have been altered by Miss Ellison herself. But Marlowe cut him off. Digital signatures verify the origin. Mr. Ellison's IP address logged the final transfers at 2:14 a.m. on the 17th. The judge's gaze turned to my father. Is that correct? Dad hesitated, throat tightening. He moved the money to protect the company. From whom? I asked quietly. From me. He looked at me then really looked. You were planning to leave, Nora. Start your own firm. I couldn't risk you taking our clients. My chest burned. So you stole from me before I could build anything of my own. Mom whispered, Harold, please. But Dad wasn't hearing her anymore. His voice dropped to a rasp. I built everything you had. You owe me your success. The judge's gavel struck once. That's enough. Marlowe slid another document forward. This is the company's new account statement. The funds have been frozen pending investigation. Mr. Ellison, you'll relinquish temporary control to your daughter as the acting trustee. Dad stared at me, disbelief and pride warring behind his eyes. The hearing adjourned. When it ended, Mom reached for my hand outside the door. He'll never forgive you. I'm not looking for forgiveness, I said. I'm looking for peace. Outside, sunlight pierced through a crack in the clouds, slicing across the courthouse steps like gold ribbon. The motif of light had turned gentle again, no longer blinding but guiding. And as I walked down those steps, I realized this wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclamation. What they took wasn't money. It was voice. And I'd just taken it back. The days after the hearing felt strange, like the house finally stopped humming after years of hidden machinery. No more late-night phone calls, no more messages laced with accusation. Just silence. Thick, deliberate silence. I thought peace would sound softer, but peace, it turns out, sounds like distance. The company keys were delivered to me by courier. Small ring, 2 tarnished fobs, one for the office and one for the warehouse. I laid them on my kitchen counter beside the brass coffee scoop I'd kept from the cafe. Same weight, different meaning. The motif, the message, the door, the ledger, the mirror, the light had now settled into something quieter. The key, what once locked me out, now opened everything. Evan texted first. I'm sorry, Nora. For all of it. Mom's not talking to me either. Dad's gone to stay with Uncle Ray. I typed and deleted 3 replies before settling on. Do better next time. No punctuation. No anger. Just the truth, stripped of emotion the way I'd learned truth needs to be when the world doesn't want to hear it. That night, I returned to the company building alone. The air inside smelled like printer ink and stale ambition. I turned on the lobby lights and walked the halls that used to swallow my confidence whole. In my old office, a box sat on the desk. Files, framed photos, and one sealed envelope. My name written in my father's hand again. I almost left it there, but curiosity has a pulse all its own. Inside was a single page folded twice. I did what I thought was right, Nora. You were always 10 steps ahead, and it scared me. I wanted to protect what I built, even from you. I see now I built walls, not foundations. Don't let this family end with my mistakes. No apology. Just recognition. It was almost enough. I placed the note in the filing drawer labeled pending, because that's what forgiveness is. A process that needs time to settle. Outside, rain began to fall again. Through the glass, I saw the reflection of my own office door, open for the first time in months. The hallway light spilled across the floor, a narrow path pointing forward. Marlo called as I locked up. You've got full clearance to manage the trust now, she said. What will you do first? I looked back at the door, its edges glowing faint gold. Rebuild, I said. Not just the business. The meaning. Good answer. As I stepped into the rain, the key in my pocket pressed warm against my leg, as if it remembered every door that once refused me. The silence after betrayal wasn't emptiness, it was room. And for the first time I wasn't walking out. I was walking through. 3 months later, the warehouse smelled of fresh paint and roasted coffee beans instead of diesel. The company sign, once heavy with my father's name, had been replaced with something simpler. Allison Collective. Beneath it, smaller words read, People First. Always. I stood out front as sunlight poured through the open loading bay. For the first time, the space didn't feel haunted. It felt honest. The motif had shifted again, from the key that unlocked the past to a foundation that could finally hold weight. Inside, a dozen new hires were setting up their stations. Local drivers, accountants, and part-timers who'd lost work when the old company folded. Lila managed payroll now. She was laughing genuinely, her sleeves rolled up and coffee stain on her cuff. Grand opening tomorrow, she said, grinning. You nervous? Just enough to feel alive. She handed me a small box. Found this in Grandma's attic while cleaning. Thought you'd want it. Inside was an old silver locket. My baby photo on one side, a tiny folded note on the other. I opened it carefully. Doors close so hearts can open. Her handwriting. Always circling back, always a clue. I clipped the locket around my neck, its metal cool against my skin. Guess she's still managing the place, I said. Lila smiled. I think she's proud of you. By afternoon, I sat in the corner office. My father's old one. The desk was cleared except for one object, the brass key. Its edges had worn smooth, letters nearly faded. I traced the word deposit again and realized what it meant all along. Grandma used to say, you don't deposit money, you deposit faith. The phone rang. Detective Marlowe's voice came through, steady as ever. Just wanted to say the case is officially closed. Your father signed over the remainder of the assets last week. He's moving to Vermont, teaching accounting workshops. That sounds like him, I said softly. Still counting. She chuckled. And you? Still building. Always. At sunset, I hosted a small gathering, employees, neighbors, even a few family members brave enough to show. Mom came too. She looked older, gentler, eyes full of quiet apology. When the lights dimmed, I gave a short speech. This place was built on the ashes of misunderstanding. But every mistake left a brick. And sometimes, I paused, feeling my throat tighten, sometimes the only way to rebuild trust is to stop waiting for permission. Applause filled the air, soft and sincere. Afterward, Mom hugged me for the first time in years. You sound just like her, she whispered. Grandma. She nodded. No. You. Outside, the street lights flickered on, gold circles opening along the road like doorways of light. The foundation was solid now. And for the first time it didn't feel like I'd won against them. Felt like I'd finally built something for me. By winter, the Ellison Collective had become more than a business. It was a heartbeat stitched from second chances. A place where mistakes didn't end stories, they rewrote them. The old warehouse pulsed with life. Delivery vans humming outside, laughter echoing through glass offices that finally had windows open to the air. The motif had reached its quiet evolution. After the message, the door, the ledger, the mirror, the light, the key, and the foundation, there was only one thing left. The legacy, what remains after the noise dies down. Every morning I unlocked the front door myself. The brass key still fit perfectly, though its ridges were worn smooth. Each turn felt like an oath renewed. Honesty over history. Lila ran the operations now, sleeves always rolled to her elbows, a clipboard in hand and optimism that filled whole rooms. She'd painted a quote on the break room wall in looping letters. We don't rebuild trust. We build new homes for it. Mom visited sometimes, bringing apple muffins like offerings for peace. We didn't speak of Dad much, but she told me he sent postcards from Vermont. Sketches of mountains, tiny notes that said things like, still counting, still learning. I kept them in the same notebook where that first printed text, we no longer trust you, was taped. The paper had yellowed, but I never threw it away. It reminded me where silence can start, and where it can end. On the day of our first community open house, I found myself standing by the window that faced the river. The late afternoon light poured through, scattering gold across the floorboards. Kids were touring the trucks outside, their laughter blurring with the hum of the city. For the first time the world felt steady. I took the brass key from my pocket and pressed it into a shallow groove on the wooden sill, a small keepsake left there like a seed. Caught the light one last time, flashing deposit across the wall. I smiled. The word no longer meant loss or storage. It meant what you leave behind when you move forward. Later, as the building emptied and the echo of footsteps softened, I sat by the open door. The winter air rolled in, cool but kind, and the quiet clicked perfectly into place. I whispered to the empty hall, to every version of myself that once waited for permission. You were never locked out. You were becoming the door. Outside, a delivery truck pulled away, headlights cutting through the dusk. The warehouse lights dimmed one by one, until only the glow from the front lamp remained, warm, unwavering, familiar. The final hinge gave a soft sigh, the sound of everything closing exactly as it should.